Hello boys and girls, how are you? Hope you're all doing good and ready for another children's talk today. Now I'm going to tell you a story today about two birds. Now one was called Franny Robin, and Franny Robin was very old fashioned, and she liked to do things just the old fashioned way, the way she had always done in the past. But then there was a second bird, and her name was Fancy Robin. And Fancy Robin sort of was more modern and liked to try different new things. And one day these two birds were having a wee chat. "Good morning," chirped Fancy. And she said, "Have you chosen a place for your nest yet?" "Oh yes," said Fanny. "I have decided to build a that big pine in front of the house. How about you?" And Fancy pointed in the opposite direction. She knew it wouldn't do for her to build her nest close to Franny, as you know, there wouldn't be enough food for the two birds and their families. So she had manners, and she knew that this was the right thing to do. So Fancy said, "That apple tree over there suits me fine, and I'm going to get started this morning. Come over for a visit when you've finished." So the two birds went away and they were building their nests, and Fancy was flying back to her own territory, to her own place, and she began to look for all the building materials that she needed for her nest. "Every spring it's the same," she grumbled. "I have to search and search for proper building materials, bark and twigs." Fancy stopped in the middle of her sentence. Her beady eye had discovered something on the ground. Quickly she flew. She made a graceful landing beside the objects of her curiosity. The bin man had been very careless that morning, and a large number of pink tissues had blown out of the bin when he took off the cover to empty it, and he hadn't bothered to pick them up. Well, whenever Fancy saw all of these pink tissues, she thought, "That's just the thing for my nest. Oh, I am so fortunate to have seen these, and they're so pretty too." She picked up as much of the tissue as she could carry in her beak, and she winged her way back to the apple tree. In a moment she was away back for more. Fancy chuckled to herself as she made the foundation for her nest with the tissues. This was so much easier than looking about for barks and twigs. "I'll just mix in a few leaves and my nest will be done. Really, this is so much better than the old-fashioned way." In no time at all, Fancy had finished her nest. It looked neat and strong, hidden among the leaves of the apple tree. She stood off on a branch to admire her work. Oh, she was so pleased with her work. "I really must fly over to the pine tree and tell Franny about my good fortune," she thought to herself. Then she added, "Franny is my friend. I'll tell her about what I found, and there is enough left for her to use in her nest as well." So Fancy headed over to Franny feeling very pleased with herself, and she flew across the yard into the pine tree next door. She made it plain from the start that she was hunting for nest materials or food in Fanny's territory. "Just visiting. I'm not searching for anything in your area. I'm just visiting you." Franny had just come back to the tree with a sizable piece of bark in her beak. "Oh, Franny," gushed Fancy, "you'll never guess what. I have just found a whole pile of pink tissues. The bin man dropped them this morning and I picked them up and I have used them for my foundations in my nest. I didn't have to search much at all for materials. I'm finished my nest." "Already?" said Franny. "I've only started." "I know," agreed Fancy. "When you do it the old-fashioned way, it takes so much longer than the modern way." "And this building material that you told me about, Franny, is it as strong as bark and twigs?" she asked Fancy. "Yeah, I think so. Come and see for yourself. And if you like, I'll show you where it is and you can get it for yourself." So the two birds flew over to Fancy's nest, and whenever Franny said, "Oh," she says, "that does look good. I like the look of that, and it does look strong enough," chirped Fancy. "It is," said Fancy confidently. "Come and get some of the material for yourself." "Maybe I will," thought Franny. So she showed Franny where the tissues were, and whenever Franny said, "These tissues, they're very flimsy. I think they wouldn't be strong enough for the nest." She hesitated. "I would prefer to build my nest the old-fashioned way," and Franny flew off. Well, after the birds got some food for themselves and all of that, the next day their eggs were hatched. Their little eggs were hatched, and the two birds sat in their nests protecting their eggs, and everything was going really well until one night the rain started. Now, it wasn't just a wee shower of rain that was very, very quick. It rained all night long, and it was so heavy. And as it rained and it rained and it rained, Fancy's nest started to get ruined. And she thought, "Oh dear, maybe this wasn't a good idea." Whereas Franny's nest was secure and safe. And it rained and it rained and it kept raining, so much so that poor Fancy's eggs all fell through the nest and were damaged. And she thought, "Oh dear, maybe Franny and her old-fashioned way is the best." And you see, boys and girls, this reminds me of a story in the Bible, and that is the story of the wise and the foolish man, where they built their houses on the sand and on the rock. And maybe you have heard that story in Sunday school, and maybe you know that story. And you see, sometimes boys and girls today are a little bit like Fancy, and they think the modern ways are the best ways, and they think, I'm not going to listen to the Bible, or I'm not going to church or Sunday school the way my mummy and daddy wants me to do. But sometimes the more traditional ways of going to church and Sunday school and Bible club, they are the best ways. And you see, the man in the story who built his house upon the rock, that is a symbol of building your life upon Jesus. And Jesus died on the cross because he loved each one of you, so that you could be saved and you could build your life upon him, a good, firm, sturdy foundation. And then whenever the storms of life come, as hard times do come, you will have Jesus with you to help you in all that you are doing. Okay, boys and girls, talk to you very soon. Bye.